When I was 16 years old, I became obsessed with cars. My only dream in life was to one day own a Lamborghini.
Just bought this new Lamborghini here.
Over the next few years, I built a business that made me millions of dollars. And at 22 years old, I bought my first one. Now, before we get into it, let's go back a little bit. It all started in Cuba, April 5th, 1996, the day that I was born. It was a pretty good day for me.
That's too far back.
That's too far.
Yeah.
Let's start from scratch. My name is Joaquin Corrales, and in this video, I want to break down exactly how I did it. This is the video that I wish I would have seen when I was 16. You know, I would go on YouTube and search the word Lamborghini, and sometimes I would even search for the latest videos because I had already seen absolutely everything on there that had a Lamborghini in the title. But you know, most of these videos, they would show you how nice the car was and they would drive it and stuff like that, but people would never explain how they got to the point where they could afford something like this. So what I did was that I studied, you know, my life and all my successes and the failures and everything, and I realized that there's 3 lessons that I keep coming back to over and over again. And if my younger self would have had these lessons, then I know for a fact that I would have been able to get here much, much faster. Now, before we dive in, do me a favor and hit a like on this button and a subscribe so we can tell the YouTube algorithm to show this video to at least one more person. So the first lesson is called urgent patience. And really, as I was starting up, something that I loved doing was reading. And I would study billionaires and, you know, people going out there and doing these crazy things. And the common concept that I kept seeing over and over again was this concept of urgent patience. And basically how it works is that these people decide that they want to do something and they take one step towards that goal every single day, realizing that it might not take them a week, might not take them a month, it might take them years, but they'll continue to make those steps day after day. In early 2017, I started what would be the most successful business I had ever started. But 3 years before that, I had been taking shots nonstop and only seeing constant failure. In 2014, I tried to start a women's online clothing store and I lost everything. I didn't get a single sale. In 2015, I started an online fitness app, a mobile app on your phone. I got 40 downloads and shut it off. That same year, I started an eBay store with a partner selling car parts. We got a cease and desist letter about 3 months after, and we were getting a lot of sales, but we were told by the car manufacturer that we had to stop selling or they were gonna sue us. Later that same year, I embarked in a 12-month development program where I, by myself, programmed an entire software geared towards psychotherapy companies. And I had a partner who supposedly had a bunch of connections with agencies. Turns out that he didn't. So I built this entire software and nobody cared. Later that year, I made a social media app. You could only share 1 piece of content per day. And it's funny because someone showed me the other day some application called Be Real saying that they copied me, and I was like, I only got 200 downloads. Now we're in 2017 and I'm 21 years old. And it was this year that I took the biggest risk of my life. And that risk was quitting a nice and safe 9-to-5 job where I was making $80,000 a year. Now, $80,000 a year at this point is more money than both my mom and my dad were making at the time. Like, I was basically paying for the mortgage at home. And I decided I'm gonna quit this thing, I'm gonna take a risk in this business. I left the job, and these next 2 years that followed this were the hardest years of my entire life. From 2017 to 2019, I worked 15-hour days every single day, 7 days a week. I would wake up, walk to the room next door, sit down where 2 of my best friends would already be working, and just try things. I sacrificed everything, spending time with family, going out with friends. I lost friendships. I almost went broke twice, and it was a really dark time for me. But if there was one thing, it was that I would not stop trying, because I knew that as long as I kept going at it, eventually, whether that was in a year, in 2 years, or in 10 years, I would eventually get it right at least once. And it was really out of this desperation that my first 7-figure business was born. After pivoting a few times, we created a software company called Contact Flow. We spent the first 7 months working on this tool, and it took us 7 months to finally release the first version. After we released that first version, I realized that nobody cared. People would rather use MailChimp, they would rather use anything out there except this brand new tool that just came out. Why would they? And so what I did was that I decided to quickly pivot this software to be focused on e-commerce businesses, because initially it was just a general email marketing tool. I figured out a lot of different ways to go out there and start promoting it, and this software allowed us to create an entire business centered around e-commerce. It was divided into a couple different branches. So we had our own e-commerce stores that were doing anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000 a month in sales. Then we had a couple different software tools centered around product sourcing, product fulfillment, advertising automation, and so on. And then finally, we had a consulting branch where we would show beginners how to start their own e-commerce business, as well as help people that were already experienced in scaling their stores to $5, $10, $15, $20,000 a day for a profit share. If I look back as to how I got to where I am today with all the experience that I have, I realized that it all comes down to this concept of urgent patience, right? Like, when you see a baby, my sister just had 2 kids and they're learning how to walk now. And when you see a little kid learning how to walk, what do you see? You see a kid get up and fall, get up and fall. And he continues trying until eventually he gets it. And seeing success in business is the same exact way. You have to put in the work every single day, knowing that it might not work for the first year, the first multiple years, but have the same exact ambition and attitude that you did on day one. The second lesson is taking action despite uncertainty. And this was actually one that took me a very long time to fully internalize. What happens is that as you gain more experience and you gain more knowledge, you have the ability to, when given a set of variables, analyze things in a completely different way. And so really, if you don't understand this concept, the smarter that you are and the more experience that you get, the more of a danger you are to yourself. Let me explain. When you have a lot of experience, you tend to analyze all the possible scenarios of a situation. And then what happens is that you get stuck in a constant flow of analysis with no action being taken. This is also called analysis paralysis. For example, when I created our email marketing tool, Contact Flow, I was 21 years old and I didn't have much business experience. I had failed at a bunch of different things, but I'd never had any experience in actually going and growing an actual company. And so we created this tool thinking that people would just come to the product, but it's so much more than that. But we still had this belief and this ignorance that allowed us to go out there and spend all these resources and all this time in making the actual tool happen anyways. And so we spent half a year making this software. And after we were done, literally nobody cared. But it was because we even got to the point where I was able to build that software that we were then able to pivot it in a couple different ways and create my first 7-figure business, which really originated from this software tool. And sometimes I wonder if I had all the experience that I have now, if I would have even tried that. You know, the bottom line is that you're always gonna have uncertainty, no matter how much experience you have. I remember I was having dinner a couple weeks ago with one of my really good friends, and he does close to $15 million a year, right? Which is a lot more than me. And I was telling him about this, and he was like, that happens to me all the time. And the bottom line is that just like it happens to him, it happens to everyone, forever, no matter how much experience you have. You're always gonna be uncertain. And the bottom line is that the only way to know whether something is gonna work or not is to try it. Taking action is better than just living a life analyzing and never doing anything. Which brings me to the final lesson. This lesson has been the main driver of every successful business that has ever existed. Every single business out there that has been able to make something out of themselves has followed this exact lesson. And if you start applying it today, I know for a fact you're going to see results. I want to show you this lesson inside of my computer, so let's go ahead and head over there. This final lesson is going to be centered around the scientific method. Now I know what you're thinking, and it's Joaquin, what is this, 4th grade science class? And I know, I hate science. But this right here is the driver and one of the most important elements of any successful company. So let's go ahead and start with the first step, and that is to make observations. And so when you're going out there and you're trying to build a successful business, you shouldn't be trying to come up with the next big idea that's going to change everything and something that's brand new, because you're probably broke and that's way too risky. So what you're going to do is you're going to go out there and you're going to find something that someone is doing that's already working. For example, if you're thinking about starting an e-commerce business, you're probably going to want to go out there and study advertisements of different e-commerce products, right? Because here's the thing, if someone is spending money on advertising something, it's because they're making a higher return than the cost of the advertising. If someone is spending $100 every day on advertising, they need to be making some money back. Otherwise, they're just losing money. And so when you go out there and you find products that people are advertising over and over, companies that are successful, it's because because they're making money. And so you're making observations at this point. You're looking around and you're trying to get some ideas. The next thing is you're thinking of interesting questions. You're asking yourself, what is it about this that is making it work? Like, for example, when you look at Yeezy, right? Like Kanye West shoe brand, you don't think, oh, I'm gonna go make a shoe brand because look, Yeezy is $1 billion brand, right? Because you're gonna realize that the pattern there is the personal brand, which is Kanye West.
That's great.
Right? So that's not something that you would pursue. So you try to figure out, what is it about this that's making it work? Is it that the product is so good? Is it that the advertising is so good? And then based on all these observations, you formulate a hypothesis. So this is your guess, right? What you think is going to work. And this is one of the hardest parts to get from here forward because there's so much uncertainty, right? We spoke about that earlier in the video. You will never be 100% sure whether something is going to work or not, but you need to formulate this hypothesis, which is based on your observations, based on the things that you're studying as to what you think is going to work. Then what you're going to do is you're going to start the reiteration process. So you come up with a hypothesis and you say, look, if I do this, this, and this, then this is what I expect to happen, right? If I go out there and I start 5 different advertisements and I expect to get a sale. You create a hypothesis based on what you think is going to work. And then the only thing that is left is for you to go out there and test it. And when you test this thing, you're gonna get feedback. And that feedback is going to tell you whether you need to change something or whether it worked or whether you need to try again and increase the sample size, right? And so the bottom line is that every single business operates through the scientific method because you always have to be testing new things and you're never 100% sure if something is going to work or not until you actually try it. But if you really want to innovate and you really want to see the biggest change, then you're gonna have to be making hypotheses and testing these things in a way that no one has ever done it before, which is why Snapchat was the first one to come up with stories because they made that gamble on that it was going to work, right? And that's just a small example to show you that this really applies to absolutely everything. And I'm absolutely fascinated by this because you understand that it's all a game of trial and error. I wish I could sit here and tell you that there was one thing that you could do to completely turn everything around or to make you $100 million in the next week, but it's never like that. It's always constant iteration, constant reiteration based on you making a hypothesis on what can possibly work. And so I think that if you really understand that and you start applying it today, realizing that there's gonna be uncertainty, that you're gonna have to create a hypothesis, that you're gonna have to test it, and that is the only way, that by itself puts you ahead of 99% of people out there who are simply wanting and not doing.